So today we're going to talk about balance, and this is really important because generally people think about balance later in life, generally when it becomes an issue. But what the point of today, I suppose, is to try and do a little bit that it won't ever become an issue for you, or if you do have a bit of an issue with your balance, that we can try and over the course of the program improve it, which of course we will. Right now, I'm just going to keep it in the slide view I have in case anything gets knocked off for me. But in terms of balance training, so the question is, well, who should do it? And the answer is everybody. Okay, and so sorry if I pause my speech. What's wrong is I'm letting someone in, so just so as you know, so everybody should do some, but people need different amounts. So this is kind of a key slide in terms of letting you know maybe where you are. And so people who are low risk of falls, which would be me, or people who have good strength and good balance, should still do something, even 5 minutes twice a week. And of course, now that you train with us, everybody is doing that in your prime time sessions. But for people who are at medium risk of falls, the requirement goes up to 3 to 4 days a week. So who is that? It's if you feel your balance is a bit poor. So like if you're a little unsteady getting up and down steps, or if you feel like your leg strength isn't great. So for example, if you need to help yourself get out of a chair with your hands, then you mightn't have optimal leg strength. But also anyone who has osteoporosis falls into this category, only because what we absolutely don't want is for you to have a fall because your bone mass isn't what we would like it to be. But I am covering osteoporosis in another few weeks' time, just so as you know. So that you'd be in the medium risk of falls, and you need to do a little bit more. And of course, the people who are in high risk of falls would be people who would be quite frail. You might have had a history of falling before, or recurrent falls. And you would be classified as high risk. And in that case, you need to be doing so a little 5 minutes of balance most days of the week. You can do it at your kitchen sink. It doesn't require a huge amount, but you just need to be mindful to do it. So however many days you do it actually depends on you and your current ability. So today I want to talk you through some examples of balance, some of the benefits of it. And I'm also going to share a circuit that we're going to give to you that you can do at home if you wish. All right. So in terms of examples of balance exercises, you've done some in your classes already, so some of these will be familiar. And of course, a lot of you have done your balance test with us, and we'll be repeating that at the end of the program to see how you do. But the easy ones to do in terms of we don't need any equipment would be standing exercises. So that would be standing on one leg. So stand on the left leg, for example, and raise the right leg out to the side, and then raise it in front. Raise it behind, bring your knee to your chest, and then of course you do it on the opposite side. So they're called single leg standing balance exercises. And what we've been saying to people in class is, of course, if your balance is not optimal, be sure to do that with a wall close to you that you can touch if you need to, or with one hand on a chair. And so that'll help you with your balance. And also over the course of the 12 weeks, we would hope that we'll be able to remove those aids as you get stronger and better balance. And just another thing that you could do for a bit of variety if you wanted for yourself is to use something like a stability cushion. And that's the blue thing that you see there, the picture of the blue. It's kind of like a squishy rubber thing filled with air. And what you do in that case is you pop it on your chair, and you would sit up on it, sit upright, and engage your core muscles, because your core muscles are your tummy, you're very, very, very involved in balance. And as you do that, you can do things like, it's all written here, but I'm just going to speak as it comes into my head. So you can sit up straight, and then you can start bringing one knee to your chest and then the other. And in fact, you can do this without the stability cushion, but that just makes it a little bit harder. You can lean. So if I sit up good and straight in my chair, I'm kind of, my center of gravity is where it should be. But if I start leaning forwards and backwards and side to side, I'm starting to challenge my balance, and I'm starting to challenge my core muscles, which regulate balance. So these are the postural muscles. So you can do things like that, or if you want to make it even more difficult, you can stand on the cushion and do the same. And those cushions, I think they're fairly reasonable if anyone wanted to do it to progress their training. Like and I think you can get them in Argos and places like that. But like they should be in and around maybe the €20 mark, so they're not in the hundreds, which gym equipment can be very expensive. I'm not saying you need to get one. I'm just saying if you want to progress your training, it's something that you could do. And then other things that you can do is if you like to dance, like don't forget something like dancing. Dancing is a really great challenge for balance, because you're moving around in different directions, and you might be looking in different directions, and by you looking over your shoulder and changing that type of thing, that really stresses balance as well. And you're often moving from one foot to the other and shifting your weight around your center of gravity. So dancing is brilliant. Other things you can do is the balance clock. So in class, we would often say, right, pretend you're standing in the center of the clock, where 12 o'clock is in front, 6 o'clock is behind, and then you have 3 and 9. And we would say to you, stand on one leg and bring the other leg to 2 o'clock. And then bring it to 7 o'clock, and so on and so on. So that balance clock exercise that you can see in the pictures there is really good as well. And there's also, if you're technology minded, there's a Clock Yourself app. And I think I'm nearly sure it's free. You can download it. And what it does is it'll do little balance challenges for you. And you can choose the time, so it can speed things up or slow things down. So it's a nice fun way of getting some balance in as well. Throwing and catching are great, and you don't even need a partner. So if you have a wall and you literally throw it the ball in all different directions, down low, up high, side to side, and moving and shifting your weight around, that teaches balance too. And the way you would start is you might start with quite a large kind of soft ball. And then the smaller the ball gets, so for example, when you get closer to a tennis ball and do these types of activities, they're really good for coordination and balance and agility and all sorts of stuff. So really, like 2 minutes of that is really great training. Just to be mindful, walking over uneven terrain requires balance. So if you're doing kind of cross-country walking, or if you happen to be doing mountain walking or walking in the woods or anything like that, just be mindful that it does require balance. It requires a lot of work from your feet and all of the kind of receptors in your feet to tell your body to keep stabilizing itself. So the reason I'm telling you that is, if you do that type of training, great, because you're training balance. But if you have balance issues, it's not the place to go. So you'd be better until you get better with your balance. You'd be better off staying on kind of smooth, flat ground. So just be mindful of that. And of course, what you're doing with us, which is multimodal training, meaning the balance work you're doing with us, the strength work, the flexibility, and the aerobic stuff, that's the best combination. That it's fantastic for training balance. So what we've done is we have, as part of the program, the primetime program we ran during COVID, we created some resources, and this is just one example. So if anyone wanted to do a little bit of balance training at home, these are 11 exercises, and Kira is going to send it into your inbox tomorrow, and you are very welcome to use this if you want to do some additional work. For example, if you have osteoporosis and you decided, right, I'm training twice a week with us, but I also need to do another little bit, this is something you could do, or any of the examples that I just talked about. It's just to give you a flavour for what's possible, what you could do. Now, we talk about, as you know, Kira and I, in previous topics, we talk about everything in relation to the FIT principles. So what are the FIT principles for balance? And the frequency is 2 to 4 days a week, depending on your risk category. So you need to go back to my first slide, and you need to decide, are you low risk of falls, medium risk of falls, or high risk of falls? So if you're low risk, you do 2 days a week to keep yourself low risk. If you're medium, you do 3 or 4 days a week. And then if you're high risk, then you do 4 or more if necessary, depending on how bad it is. Okay, so that's the F. Intensity is low to moderate. So many of these exercises, balance exercises, don't require massive effort. So it shouldn't be that you're puffing and panting and gasping doing your balance exercises, because that's generally not required. But what I will say is, the better you get at balance, and you start choosing more difficult exercises, they're actually really dependent on strength. So when you start getting into that side of stuff, you tend to work a little bit harder because it's using all of the body and it's difficult to do. So for that reason, the intensity is usually a little bit higher when you're doing more challenging exercises. Time, 5 minutes. Do it anywhere, 5 minutes is perfect. And in terms of the type, well, what could you do? We've just covered that over the last 3 slides. So there are your FIT principles for balance, okay? And right, so we'll say over the next few weeks, everyone is becoming absolutely fabulous doing all of your balance exercises, and it's getting really easy for you and you want to push on. What could you do if it's safe for you to do so? And that's the goal, right? So things that you can do is, number 1, you can gradually reduce your base of support. So what do I mean by that? So if you've been doing exercises where you have your feet quite wide, maybe when you're moving side to side, what you can do is you can narrow your base of support, meaning push your feet closer together, and that'll knock you off balance a little bit. Or of course, the obvious thing is to just do it on one leg, because you have a very small base of support there. You've just got the one leg. So the aim would be that we can do things on one leg and that both sides are equal, which would be fabulous. Number 2, you can stress the stabilizers. Now, they're all the little muscles in your tummy and in your back and in your hips. And you shift your body around your center of gravity. So that's what I was talking about. Like, say you're on one leg and you start to lean left, and then you start to lean right. And of course, that's in the circuit that I've just shown you. Or you start to move forwards and backwards. Or, you know, some of the exercises would be to come up onto your toes or come back onto your heels and lift the toes up. So all the stuff that you're doing in class, they will stress the stabilizers and make things a little bit more difficult. Now, the real difficult one is where you close your eyes. Number 3. So if you close your eyes, you are removing all of the visual input that comes into our brain that helps us with balance, okay? So even if you're brilliant at balance with your eyes open, by closing your eyes instantly, it becomes 50 times harder. So if you decide you're going to do something like close your eyes while you're training, you need to be beside a wall, okay? You need to make sure that you can't fall over. And it's not the thing to do if your balance is poor. This is only for advancing your balance training, because our eyes are so important in balance. And I suppose as we get older and maybe vision changes and things like this, that doesn't help our balance either. So it's just to be mindful, like as we get older, kind of how we perceive distance and, you know, the depth of a step and things like that is different. So we just need to be mindful of that. And that's exactly why we need to train our balance, that we don't have issues. Okay, number 4 is reduce your contact with a supportive object. So if you have been leaning on a partner or a chair or a wall, we'd be hoping over time that you can move away from that and balance yourself, okay? Number 5 is you can introduce equipment like the stability cushion that I just mentioned, because it'll make things more difficult. And number 6 is get your legs as strong as you can get them, because poor balance is often as a result of muscle wastage in the legs and poor strength. Automatically your balance is gone. So if you want good balance, you need strong legs. You need to do your squats, your lunges, your sit to stands, up and down off the chair, just the stuff that you do in everyday life. You need to get those legs strong. And of course, that's what we're doing with the prime time of life. And by the time we're finished, you will be sick squatting and lunging, but you'll have really strong legs, which is the point of it. So they're all great things to give you great balance. Now, so obviously, if you do balance training, what will happen is your balance will get better. And really and truly, what that actually means is, as you get older, you will have a very low risk of falls, and in turn, very low risk of kind of fractures and breaks and things that can happen with falls. And if you end up in a situation where you've had a fall and you're hospitalized and you're immobilized, and in that time period, you lose more muscle, you lose more strength, you're losing bone mass, you're losing all these things in bed rest, that straight away impacts your quality of life, it impacts your mental health, it impacts your physical health, and it really impacts your functional ability. So, and often we don't regain it. So the point of all of this is just don't let that happen. Okay, so we need to get the legs strong, get your balance good, and then you don't need to worry about any of this. Because as you can see on the blue star there, poor balance and poor leg strength are major predictors of falls in later life. Okay, we can avoid them. This falling is not inevitable. It's not an inevitable consequence of aging. It is an inevitable consequence of frailty. Okay, so we need to be strong and we need to have good balance. So on that note, I will leave you with health homework. So I would ask you to think about this. So, you know, do you do balance training? Possibly before this program, no is generally the answer, unless you've been with us before. So right now you're doing balance training twice a week, if you're training with us twice a week. So you can count each training session with us as 5 to 10 minutes of balance, because that's what we're doing. And the rest of the time you are training your aerobic fitness, your flexibility, and with the resistance training, you're training your strength. So do you meet the recommendations for you? And to answer that, you need to ask yourself, am I low risk of falls, medium risk of falls, or high risk of falls? And then look at what you're doing in relation to what the recommendation is for those 3 categories. If you need to increase your balance, how could you do that? Have a look at the green box on the slide. Obviously, keep training. Come to class as much as you can. Keep working on your leg strength. So do, you know, if you're standing at the sink, if you're waiting for the kettle to boil, do a few squats. Do your sit to stand out of the chair, trying not to use your hands, and keep the legs strong. And then what you could do is, from this presentation today, you could do something that you've never done before. So maybe you do the circuit that you're going to get into your inbox tomorrow, or maybe you do that clock exercise that we just talked about, or maybe you do some throwing and catching or a bit of dancing around the room. It doesn't matter. So maybe try something new.